The World Cup champion will be crowned this week, and you can trade the tourney through the finals on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform. Right now, Spain is trading at 58% to beat Argentina, meaning a 100 trade pays out $166 if they win. On Kalshi, you're trading against other people in a live market. No house, no odds makers. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code HOOPS to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In April 1986, roughly 6,000 math teachers gathered in Washington, D.C. for the annual convention of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Inside the convention hall, sessions ran with titles like "Motivation is not a four-letter word." Outside, a small group of those same math teachers were picketing. They were protesting the organization hosting their own convention. The issue was not pay. It was not working conditions. It was a small plastic device that fit in a shirt pocket and could perform long division faster than any student in the room. The calculator. Our history brief today returns to today in context and why North Korea exists in today's modern world. A quick word from our sponsors.
You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/Libsyn. That's JERRY.ai/LIBSYN.
This day in history. On July 18th, 64 CE, the Great Fire of Rome began, destroying much of the ancient city over 6 devastating days. The disaster forever became linked, fairly or not, with Emperor Nero. On July 18th, 1925, Adolf Hitler published the first volume of Mein Kampf, outlining the extremist ideology that would later shape Nazi Germany and contribute to the outbreak of World War II. Story of the day. By the mid-1980s, calculators had become cheap enough that nearly every student could own one. Texas Instruments and Casio were producing basic models for just a few dollars. What had once been a specialized scientific instrument was now sitting in pencil cases across the country. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, the NCTM, the most influential professional organization shaping how math was taught in American schools, had been advocating for calculator use in classrooms since at least 1980. Their position was that calculators could free students from tedious computation, allowing more classroom time for conceptual understanding and problem solving. State education departments were beginning to follow that lead. California's Department of Education was actively considering requiring textbook publishers to include calculators packaged with math books. Connecticut had already added a calculator section to its statewide 8th grade exam. The momentum by 1986 was clearly moving in one direction. A vocal minority of math teachers thought that direction was a serious mistake. Leading the opposition was a man named John Saxon. Saxon was not a typical figure in math education. He was a retired Air Force test pilot who had become a math teacher and eventually a textbook publisher, building a series of math books that emphasized constant, repetitive drilling in basic computation. Saxon's books had developed a devoted following among math teachers who believed that mathematical fluency came only from repetition. The same way he argued that a pianist or a shortstop builds skill through thousands of repeated motions until the action becomes automatic. His position on calculators was blunt. He believed early reliance on the devices created what he called a tremendous potential for destruction of basic computational skills in children. His argument was not really about calculators existing, it was about when and how early students should be allowed to reach for one, before or after they had built genuine number sense through old fashioned repetition. In April 1986, Saxon led a demonstration outside the NCTM's annual convention, picketing the organization's own gathering to make the point as visibly as possible. The picket line captured national press attention, specifically because of who was standing on it. These were not outside activists or worried parents. They were math teachers themselves, protesting the leadership of their own professional organization at the very convention meant to represent their collective interests. The Washington Post covered the demonstration directly, describing teachers circling outside the convention hall. The argument inside the profession was generally split, and it broke down along a few very clear lines. One side, represented by educators like Jed Babin, argued that real mathematical understanding came from manual computation, that pressing buttons on a calculator taught a student nothing about the actual process of mathematics. A junior high teacher named Steve Hake, who worked closely with Saxon, argued for building students into number fluent thinkers, specifically so that they would not need to think consciously about basic arithmetic at all, freeing mental bandwidth for harder problem solving down the line. Evie Andrews, a first grade teacher and former Oregon Teacher of the Year, summarized the core worry in a single line that has aged remarkably well. The risk, she said, is that once you have a crutch, you rely on it more and more. The other side of the debate was not dismissive of those concerns, but believed that the NCTM's broader vision was sound. Calculators, in their view, were not replacing mathematical thinking, they were removing a barrier to it. The way a typewriter doesn't replace the act of writing, it just removes the friction of forming each letter by hand. A consultant named Steve Leinwand, working with the state of Connecticut, pointed directly to the NCTM's advocacy as validation for the calculator policies his state was already implementing. Diane Harvey, another voice in the debate, raised a practical classroom concern that cut against any attempt at middle ground compromise. She pointed out that a teacher managing 30 students simply could not realistically enforce a rule allowing calculator use in some moments of class but not in others. In practice, once the devices were in the room, they were in use. The debate by the mid 1980s had moved well past whether calculators belonged in classrooms at all. It had become a fight over how early, how much, and under what conditions. History settled the argument, though not in a way either side fully expected. By the early 1990s, calculator use in American math classrooms had become standard practice at virtually every grade level. The NCTM's vision largely won out, not through a single decisive victory, but through the slow accumulation of state standards, textbook adoption decisions, and standardized testing policies that build calculator use directly into the structure of American math education. John Saxon's textbooks continued to sell, and his drilling based philosophy retained a loyal following among certain teachers and homeschooling families for decades afterward. But as a wholesale resistance movement capable of stopping the spread of calculators, the picket line of 1986 did not succeed. What it did do was put a marker down, a moment that decades later, education researchers and historians still point back to as the clearest example of a recurring pattern in American schooling. That pattern has repeated with almost exact precision every decade or so since. Internet access in classrooms in the early 2000s drew warnings about misinformation and shortcuts replacing genuine research skills. Smartphones and tablets in the 2010s drew warnings about distraction and the erosion of sustained attention. And of course, today, AI chatbots and writing tools are drawing arguments that sound almost word for word like the ones John Saxon made outside a Washington convention hall in 1986. Concerned that a powerful new tool will let students skip the cognitive struggle that actually builds the skill in the first place. Calculators did not, in the end, destroy mathematical reasoning the way Saxon feared, but they did change permanently what students need to know how to do by hand versus what they can offload to a device, a trade off that education has never fully stopped negotiating. Nobody picketed a convention center over arithmetic and won that fight outright. But the question they were fighting about, what happens to a mind that stops practicing the hard part? Well, that question never actually went away. It just kept finding a new tool to attach itself to. The history brief. Every few months, North Korea makes headlines. A missile test, a military parade, a diplomatic crisis. And many people ask the same question: how does North Korea still exist in today's world? After all, the country has faced famine, crushing economic sanctions, international isolation, and the collapse of nearly every communist ally it once had. So, why hasn't the regime fallen? The answer, as always, lies in history. To understand North Korea today, we have to go back to the end of World War II. In 1945, Japan surrendered after decades of occupying Korea. Rather than immediately restoring Korean independence, the peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel. The Soviet Union occupied the north. The United States occupied the south. Originally, the division was supposed to be temporary, but it wasn't. As the Cold War intensified, two separate governments emerged. In the north, the Soviets backed Kim Il sung. In the south, the United States supported Syngman Rhee. Both claimed to be the legitimate government of all Korea. Then in 1950, North Korea invaded the south. The result was, of course, the Korean War. The conflict quickly became one of the first major proxy wars of the Cold War, with the United States and the United Nations coalition fighting for South Korea, while the People's Republic of China intervened on behalf of the North. After 3 brutal years and millions of deaths, neither side had won. The fighting stopped in 1953, not with a peace treaty, but with an armistice. Technically, North and South Korea are still at war today. That alone explains part of North Korea's survival. The regime has spent more than 70 years portraying itself as a nation under constant threat. Military preparedness became central to its identity. But that's only part of the story. Perhaps the biggest reason North Korea still exists is, well, China. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many observers believed North Korea would soon follow. Instead, China became its economic lifeline. Today, China accounts for the overwhelming majority of North Korea's legal trade. Why? Not because Beijing necessarily approves of everything that North Korea does, but because Chinese leaders fear something even more: collapse. If North Korea suddenly disappeared, China could face millions of refugees crossing its border. Even more importantly, a unified Korea allied with the United States would place an American ally and potential American troops directly on China's frontier. From Beijing's perspective, an unpredictable North Korea is often preferable to those alternatives. Then there is the regime itself. Unlike many authoritarian governments, North Korea has built an extraordinary system of internal control. Information is tightly restricted. Independent media doesn't exist. Travel is heavily limited. Political opposition is virtually impossible. The ruling Kim family has cultivated a powerful personality cult for 3 generations, presenting itself not simply as a government, but as the embodiment of the nation itself. And finally, there's nuclear weapons. North Korea's nuclear program has fundamentally changed the equation. Countries that once considered military solutions now face the risk of catastrophic escalation. Possessing nuclear weapons has made the regime far more difficult to coerce or overthrow. So when people ask why North Korea still exists, the answer isn't just dictatorship. It's geography. It's the legacy of the Cold War. It's China's strategic interests. It's decades of political control and its nuclear deterrence. History didn't simply create North Korea. History is what keeps it alive. Understanding today's Korean peninsula means recognizing that the decisions made in 1945, the war fought in the early 1950s, and the rivalries of the Cold War are still shaping global politics nearly 80 years later. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. I would like to also remind you that if you join our Patreon community, you will have access to interviews, videos, and episodes before they air on this particular feed. Also, please check out our YouTube channel where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
The World Cup champion will be crowned this week, and you can trade the tourney through the finals on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform. Right now, Spain is trading at 58% to beat Argentina, meaning 100 trade pays out $166 if they win. On Kalshi, you're trading against other people in a live market. No house, no odds makers. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code HOOPS to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.